Good morning and welcome to Ohio Stadium. I am Tom Orr. He is Tony Gerdeman. Kevin Noon is behind the camera. We are from BuckeyeScoop.com. We are here in Ohio Stadium for today's game between the Ohio State Buckeyes and Maryland Terrapins.
I like
Tony,
turtles.
it is not. You just that was Kevin's voice right there. If you just heard that, if you are wondering, hey, it's a little foggy today. Yeah, it's a little foggy today. This is. I'm assuming this will burn off before game time. It does not seem like this is a weird weather day, but not necessarily a weather day that seems like it will affect the game.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the fog. These noon kickoffs can be really hot in the front row in those windows. So any amount of cloud cover is welcome for all of us down here in the front row. But yeah, it's not going to impact it. This is not the Eagles and Bears from 1990 or 89, whatever that was. So yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. It wasn't made for a little bit of maybe some hairy traffic in terms of the fog, but nothing outrageous, and I wouldn't worry about it. I'd worry more about, Tom, the rain.
Well, there's no rain in the forecast
okay,
either. So yeah, there's officially nothing to worry about. Everything's going to go great today for everyone here at Ohio Stadium. Yeah, the fog is supposed to burn off sometime before 11 and should be just kind of partly cloudy. High of 79 this afternoon. No wind to speak of. The flags at the top of the goalposts are just kind of straight down right now. So as far as, cross that off your list of concerns. Some things that might be on people's list of concerns. Okay, Ohio State quarterback Cj Stroud had a fantastic week last week. From all indications, he continues to be, as healthy as he's been. Are there any concerns with Cj Stroud today?
I think this game we're going to find out about a lot of are there concerns with a lot of areas. And with Cj Stroud was last week the real Cj Stroud. It was as healthy as he's been, I'm going to assume, because as we've said before, he was he got rest in fall camp. So there was some issues with his shoulder in fall camp as well. So if this was the healthiest he's been and the best he's felt and the strongest he's been, and this was his best game, I think it's safe to assume that against a defense that, Rutgers defense that tries to do different things and show the quarterback different things, he passed that test. And then you'll see some more stuff with the Maryland defense that will go 3 down, 4 down, will mix in some one high and some split safety looks. So they're going to give him a lot more to think about as well. And even though Rutgers and Maryland, you're not thinking of them as elite defenses, but if he continues to complete, 70% of his passes, no interceptions, 4 touchdowns, 350 yards, that's what a Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins should do against these defenses. So if that's also what a Cj Stroud is doing, that's a pretty good sign.
And, it's interesting. You're talking about all these kind of okay defenses and just kind of okay overall teams. At the start of the year, Ohio State had to go on the road against what we expected would be kind of at least a decent Minnesota team. Then they had their toughest challenge of the week in week 2, toughest challenge of the season of week 2 with Oregon coming to Columbus. And then it got way easier. You feel like, at the time, the complaint was kind of, well, Ohio State hasn't had their warm-up games yet, so you would have liked to have these challenging games later in the season. Like, it is what it is at that point. The Tulsa game was a little weird and gross. But it seems like from the Akron game to Rutgers to Maryland and then a week off next week, it seems like, if you're going to put those first couple weeks behind you and be able to sort of, okay, now you know what your issues are, now you can sort of take some time to solve the issues, it seems like this stretch has come kind of almost at a perfect time for this Ohio State team.
I wonder if the coaches feel that way. If you're playing really well and now you're going to take a week off, is that something they'd rather just keep going? But it has been kind of a disjointed season where this should have been the start of the season. Mm-hmm. But I think right now with what we're seeing with the confidence building, is this an opportunity for them to just regroup and not even regroup, but just assess. And then because then the real part of the schedule gets started, and that's where things need to get serious. So maybe it is, like you said, maybe it's a perfect time to do all of that and to self-scout, as they like to do during a bye week, and to make sure they're not missing anything, they're not doing too much of one thing, and allowing themselves to be predictable. There's the concern, though, that they didn't catch that earlier in the season. Like, why didn't you know you were so predictable and defensively with your offensive coaches and things like that? But I think they're going to put the bye week to good use. with a loss, they might put it to different use, though.
Yeah, well, it's potentially another week off for Cj Stroud to just kind of continue to let that shoulder rest. It's also a week to maybe install some new stuff. You've kind of done the 101 level fixes right now. You can take that bye week. Okay, now you can take 200 level classes on the fixes. And then you go to Indiana, home for Penn State, at Nebraska. All of a sudden, the road game that we thought was going to be the challenging road game there does not necessarily look as challenging as the other one. Like I think on the start of the season, we looked at Indiana as potentially the toughest game on the schedule. Now with Michael Penix not healthy and not looking right all season, Indiana kind of struggling. You wonder, and Nebraska all of a sudden looking like, they don't look like Tom Osborne, Nebraska, but they look like Frank Solich, Nebraska, or Bo Pelini, Nebraska, where it's like, they've got a little bit of a defense and they've got some stuff cooking on offense. So this is you're heading into a really interesting stretch, and then later in that month you've got Michigan State, who all of a sudden looks real good. You got Michigan, who all of a sudden looks pretty good. I mean, this is the challenges get a lot harder. This has been a good little ramp up for them.
Is the Nebraska trip looking more and more like a Purdue 2018, Iowa 2017?
I don't know. I mean, producer Kevin is shaking his head behind the computer. I don't know that I think that, because I don't know that I've seen enough out of the Nebraska offense to think.
Did you see enough out of?
Yes, I saw.
You saw enough out of Iowa.
I saw Northwestern. Yeah.
No, in 2017 you saw enough out of Iowa's offense to.
Well, Greg Schiano's not walking through that door, so Greg Schiano is someone else's problem this year. So, and you have not seen that kind of implosion from a Ryan Day team. I still think, and I wrote at the time, like, this is very much an artifact of Urban Meyer. This is an Urban Meyer program problem. Like, Nick Saban's programs do not lose by 50 points to, whatever terrible, Texas Tech. Like, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. That was very much an artifact of Urban Meyer's programs and just some of the weird stuff that was going on inside them. You haven't seen that with Ryan Day, so until you see it, I don't know if I'd necessarily worry about that. That's going to be a challenging game, because I think it's going to be a challenging game because I think Nebraska's a better team now. But we'll worry about Nebraska later. We can worry about Ohio State and Maryland right now. Travion
I like
Henderson,
turtles.
Thank you again, producer Kevin. So glad we brought you on the team. We have Travion Henderson. You've got, I think everyone is kind of going, wow, he's incredible. Why don't we see more of Travion Henderson? Ryan Day was asked this week, so when are we going to see more of Travion Henderson? Because I think everyone's kind of like, hey, this guy's running for 9 yards a carry. You should probably give him the ball more. And I think Ryan Day's aware of Travion Henderson's abilities. Are we going to see more of Travion Henderson this week? When do we start seeing more of Travion Henderson?
I think that's up to the opponent, and it's up to how well the opposing offense plays, how many points they put on the board. Because if Ohio State's up 35-0 and you're still, say in the third quarter, and you're still running Travion Henderson and he gets hurt, everybody's like, why is Travion Henderson getting so many carries in this kind of game? So you have something that is so valuable that you also have to protect it. And there's an interesting dichotomy there where you want to use it as much as you can, but you also want to be careful with it. I don't know. It's like I don't even have a good analogy for it, Tom, because it's so rare. Like, you just have to be careful. You have to watch out how you're using it. And if, it's, yes, with 25 carries, I think we all, that's this magic number of how many yards will he get with 25 carries. Mm-hmm. We talked about it on yesterday's show. But you don't need that 20 through 25th carry when Ohio State is up 42-7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for all the people who want Travion Henderson to have 25 carries probably don't want to watch what would it require for Travion Henderson to have 25 carries today. So, yeah, except the fact that you may not see it for a little while, and that's okay. You're getting into the part of the schedule where, this is a little like J.T. Barrett, where J.T. Barrett was not going to run 20 times when Ohio State was playing Bowling Green. He was going to run 20 times when Ohio State was playing Penn State because they need to save the hits on him. So,
are you saying Travion Henderson is like J.T. Barrett as a runner?
They both made explosive plays in recent games at Minnesota, so I think it's a very natural comp. No? Do you disagree?
Who do you think is the better passer?
We haven't seen Travion Henderson throw yet, so
terrible.
I don't think I can answer that question.
That is terrible.
So another running back who I'm really interested to talk about is Marcus Crowley, because Marcus Crowley is someone who was looking great until 2 years ago, suffered a pretty bad knee injury against Maryland, and then, basically fell off the radar, showed up at the very, very end of last season, later said, like, yeah, the coaches were telling him, I'm not sure you're ready. And he's like, yeah, it turns out I wasn't ready. So now he's finally back. He finally looks like Marcus Crowley again this year. That's something that, I had, it wasn't like I had written him off. It was just kind of like you didn't think about him because it was like, well, they've got these other running backs that you're thinking about. And Marcus Crowley just kind of had fallen off the radar. If Marcus Crowley can be kind of the number 2 guy there, the number 2 kind of guy who can make those explosive plays, catch the ball out of the backfield, that's potentially a very big addition for this year's Ohio State team.
It is, and you go back to that Alabama game where he basically, I don't know that he humbled himself, but he was humbled. Mm-hmm. And then he recognized that against Alabama and spoke with Tony Alford about it, how he was not ready to come back even though he thought he was. And so I wonder how much more that made him tune into what Tony Alford was saying from then till now, mm-hmm. where he was almost essentially the forgotten man because Mayan Williams came in as the starter. Travion Henderson came in as the hot thing. Evan Pryor, also a top 100 running back, so there's some attention there. And then, of course, Master Teague, who you figure, well, there's no way he's not going to be involved. And so there's, at this point, Marcus Crowley was, almost an afterthought. And then I think it was against Minnesota, they all 4 of those guys got a series or got some carries, and it was surprising that Marcus Crowley was already involved. It was, I was surprised by knowing the other guys who deserved the carries, and so for him to get carries tells you how much Tony Alford viewed him, how hard he worked in camp, and then from then till now that he continues to work. And there may be reasons for some players to get discouraged based on what they've seen from Travion Henderson. Mm-hmm. But at this point, it looks more and more like Marcus Crowley sees an opportunity that he is taking advantage of. He's taking advantage of it in practice. We saw just one random play as a 3rd down. They call a swing pass for him. They bring him in, mm-hmm. and I think like Master T came in and they pulled him out and put Marcus Crowley in for him. And they call a swing pass and it goes around 20 yards or whatever. Mm-hmm. Perfect play for a 1st down. So they have plans for him, mm-hmm. and he has made them create these plans. It's mm-hmm. not like, well, we're going to put you in, but you're not earning it. He has earned it, so they're finding ways to get him the ball. And now, if he's coming on hard, and the other guys are going to have to keep up with him at this point, I think.
And I'm going to want to circle back to the running backs in exactly 3 minutes for reasons that will become apparent shortly. But speaking of guys who maybe have earned their spots, the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line we saw last week. They had the 5 guys that they had been running with, and then Thayer Munford goes down with an injury, and Matt Jones comes in, and Matt Jones is fantastic, and Matt Jones does a great job. And then when they come back, they just start rotating offensive linemen in, and it wasn't even just like, oh, sometimes Matt Jones is in for Thayer Munford. It's like, no, sometimes Matt Jones is in for Thayer Munford, and Thayer Munford might kick it out to tackle, and then Nick Petit-Frere might kick over to right tackle. And, he's someone who has earned his spot on the field at this point. They said they almost feel like they have 6 starting offensive linemen at this point. And, to me, as long as you can, as long as that doesn't like interrupt the continuity, the flow of the game, I don't know that I would necessarily do that, just like randomly shuffle guys around just from drive to drive in the first half. But, if you can do that in the second half, keep those guys fresh, keep those guys all involved, you can have Thayer Munford maybe sit a series in the first half and let Matt Jones play it, something like that. That seems like something that, at some point down the line, that's going to pay enormous dividends for this team, having that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, we saw Matt Jones playing right guard for Paris Johnson last week. And I think if you do that sporadically, like you said, in the second half, that lets you, at any point during the season, they can play anywhere if need be. If somebody goes down with injury, they are all comfortable playing wherever. And you've got guys, like each one of those guys has played different spots, 2 different spots. And Paris Johnson, I'm sure, could kick out to right tackle if they needed him to, or left tackle, or whatever. You got the versatility there. Harry Miller getting worked back into things as well will only make them deeper. It might still take him some time before they can, rely on him, but they still have Josh Fryer that they like as well. So there's a number of guys.
Yeah, and Harry Harry Miller was back in there a little bit last week. I'm not expecting Harry Miller to start, but he's he should be good to go again this week. And again, that's just an added depth piece there that is potentially a very, very big thing. They did get some bad news this week with the announcement that Jansen Dunn is out for the season. Had a pretty serious knee injury last week. They've lost a few guys for the season. We're going to be talking about the availability report here now. So Jansen Dunn obviously unavailable for this week. Some of the other guys who have been out for the year, Tyler Friday, Cam Babb, all those guys still on here as well. Mitchell Melton, Noah Potter, who we saw, he posted something on social media where he had some kind of an emergency eye surgery last week, so we're not sure where he stands right now. Josh Proctor out for the season, obviously. But there's another name unavailable this week that, speaking of running backs, Mayan Williams, unavailable this week. Tony, what do you make of that?
Is this the third game he's missed? He's missed 3 of 4, so this is the second week in a row that he's missed.
At least he missed last week at Rutgers, and now he's missed this week.
It's you almost don't want to read too much into it, but it's really hard. It's really hard to just not read something into it based on everything that has happened with. He was the starter for 2 games, got outplayed, lost the job, was ill for a day, missed a practice, and that seemed to almost just set him back entirely because he ended up missing that game because other guys practiced harder, according to Ryan Day. And now I'll just go ahead and believe there's an injury because that's, I think we have too much conspiracy in today's society. So I'm going to side with, he's banged up, and there's no reason to push him at this point. It's not good for him though. It's certainly going to create speculation. I mean, we're speculating right now, trying not to. But
you are.
We're on this show together, and no, I just said that he's injured. I'm saying other people may speculate. Tom.
I mean, and I guess the central point is, whatever it is, if it was injury, if it was, hey, didn't practice, I didn't, whatever. Whatever it is, you're giving other guys who are talented opportunities to make plays, opportunities to continue to show, if Travion Henderson puts up a, 200-yard day against Maryland, well, that's not going to help Mayan Williams' spot on the depth chart. And if then, because Mayan Williams is going, Marcus Crowley puts up, makes a big play, or, shows that he can really be trusted in pass protection, or become a valuable asset in the passing game out of the backfield, any of those things, that's not good for Mayan Williams' job security or place in the depth chart long term. So I mean, you have to kind of keep that in mind.
Those 3 guys, Crowley, Teague, and Williams, they can fluctuate each week, and if you're not able to be there practicing, taking part in some of that fluctuation, then you're going to start out back at the bottom. When he comes back, he's going to be the 4th guy and is going to have to work his way up. Now, he can certainly do that. We've seen him do some things that are special, but he's still going to have to do it and catch up. He's going to have to play some catch up. He's going to have to overcome some guys who have gotten more experience, more reps. They've gotten a taste. Like Marcus Crowley, I guarantee at this point he doesn't want to go back to 4th.
No, and that's I mean, none of those guys do. I mean, everyone who comes to Ohio State is coming to Ohio State as a pretty highly ranked recruit who has offers to go a lot of different places and comes to Ohio State because it's I'm going to be the guy who helps them win the Big Ten and beat Michigan and go to the Big Ten, go to the Big Ten championship game, win the conference, go to the college football playoff, win the national championship. That's the goal. No one is going, well, I'm going to be 3rd on the depth chart, and I'm going to get 6 carries a week. That's the dream, baby. That's not – I mean, to get to the level where you're getting recruited by Ohio State, you have to have a certain mindset, a certain view of your skill set, and you have to be, putting in the work to get to that point. And once you get to that point, you want to have that, that you want to have that payoff with on-field success at Ohio State. 3 other names on the game time decision list: Julian Fleming, Demario McCall, Tyreek Smith. Demario McCall, not necessarily someone who's going to make a huge impact in this game. Julian Fleming, you have to be kind of frustrated for him. I mean, he's had the shoulder thing, he's kind of had a hamstring thing. It's just sort of one thing after another. He's someone who you really want to see out there, and right now his body's just not cooperating.
Yeah, and I think he was he unavailable last week?
He was unavailable, so this is progress, yes.
It is progress, but is it to the point where, if we sit him this week, we can sit him next week.
Right.
And then he can be really healthy. There's no reason to push him when he's stepping in for Chris Olave. You know, they can work around. They can play Jackson Smith and Chris Olave at the same position. They've got guys that can play so many different positions that they don't necessarily need to push Julian Fleming. But if he's fine and the hamstring, I believe that's what the talk has been. If it's good, then yeah, play him. But he's also a guy that you don't need to push. I think not having Palaie Teote on this game time decision list, he was on there last week, so we'll see some things, maybe see if they're starting to move him inside at all. But Tyreek Smith, they need to get these defensive ends going again, and so it would be good to see him out there. That's a guy that you almost, with the week off, maybe you can push them as well.
Well, yeah, and it kind of depends on the injury in some cases, and you know, my assumption on game time decision guys is if they don't go, they're almost always good to go the week after. And we had a show at some point this week where we talked about Palaie Teote, and said that about him, where he was a game time decision last week, didn't end up going. If you're close enough that you're listed as a game time decision, unless you re-aggravate it, you're probably going to be good to go the next week. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Julian Fleming. Like, just there's no reason to rush him. There's no reason to rush him. They have other wide receivers. You want him healthy. You don't want him out there and re-aggravate it again, and then just have the cycle just repeated over and over again. Take the week. Like, I'm honestly surprised if it's a close decision that these guys are even being treated as game time decisions. Like, if it's a close decision, rest them. It's okay. Tyreek Smith is an interesting one because he's a little like Fleming, where it's just been like one thing after another with him, and I'm sure it has to just be maddening because he came in as a very highly rated recruit. He has been an impact player at times, and he has just not been able to consistently stay on the field. He and Tyler Friday just constantly last year were just like on and off the availability report every single week, which is got to just drive you nuts. Yeah, I'm interested to see, is he someone else? They have depth at that defensive end spot. Do they hold him out another week? Same thing with Fleming, or do you push it and you try and get him back and try and get him right and geared up before you have to hit the road to Indiana in a couple weeks?
I think if he can play, you play him. This is a Maryland offensive line that does a very good job protecting the quarterback, so you need your best guys out there, your most experienced guys, to try and get after him. And one of Tyreek Smith's best things is not necessarily sacking the quarterback, but affecting him. And if you affect Talia Tagovailoa, he can throw some interceptions. So you need your most effective defenders out there. He's got to be hungry as heck to play. I think he's missed 3 games now, the last 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
And so it's been a while for him. If he can play, you play him. You allow that rotation to continue because, they've got some depth, but 2 of those guys on the depth chart are freshmen. So you're starting you're not as deep as you should be when you're starting a true freshman there. So the more depth you can get back, the better. And you still got to get more from Zach Harrison as well. So I think maybe having those 2 together again would help. But if he can go, I'm playing him. And obviously, if it's something where you can re-aggravate it, you got to be careful. But man, you've got to get these guys going. And he's different than Julian Fleming because Tyreek Smith is not playing behind Chris Olave. There's no Chris Olave at defensive end. So, I'd get him out there and play him as much as he can go and just, help him move forward so that he's not been off for a month by the time he gets back on the field.
Yeah, and another name, you mentioned Palaie Teote, who's not on the injury report this week. Another name that's not on there, Cam Brown. That's potentially a big one because that's another spot where they've been starting a true freshman. That one, I think there's less concern about the true freshman. The true freshman seems like he's just doing dandy. Thank you very much, Denzel Burke. But, to be able to potentially get, we talked to Sevyn Banks this week, he has, I think, had a little bit of a frustrating season again, and he's been we'll get that guy some syrup, and then,
I like turtles.
I also, producer Kevin, do you like turtles?
I like turtles.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, we'll get that guy some syrup, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Sevyn Banks, who is, he has had kind of a tough year. He had the injury kind of dragged on from spring and through the summer and kind of lingered into fall camp. Got off to a little bit of a slow start. Talked a little bit this week about the fact that he too had been on that, like, maybe not practicing as hard as he should have been kind of, list for Ryan Day. He's back now. If he's back, and you have Cam Brown back, Cam Brown off the availability report this week, if those guys are back and you can get a 3 cornerback rotation going with those 2 and Denzel Burke, that feels like boy, is that happening at the right time when you're playing, the best passing offense you've played, I mean, possibly all season.
Absolutely. And I think for me, there's no doubt that Cam Brown and Denzel Burke are the two best corners on the team. Have played the best. Maybe Seven Banks can get there this year. I do think it's quite possible that he saw all of these first-round projections and started to believe it. And I wonder how often that impacts an Ohio State corner when you see that, I'm going to be a first-rounder. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I have to go out there and do it. The analogy is a Family Guy when they all created a band and they're there for the first concert on the stage and they're like, oh, we don't know how to play any instruments. And so there is this recognition of, I do have to bust my butt and practice and prove everybody that I can do this. And so he's got to step up as well. But I think the talks have been there for him and he understands it. And it was interesting that he was brought out for media knowing that he was going to be asked these questions and was going to have to talk about how, maybe I wasn't practicing as hard, or I've been dealing with injuries, and so it's hard to go 100%. But we've seen a little bit of the rotation the last couple of weeks when both Banks and Brown have been healthy, and it's a luxury, man.
And the other part of that defensive backfield, and we're going to get to some listener or viewer questions in just a minute. Producer Kevin is nodding his head. Apparently, we have a trillion, so that's good. We can get to those in just a second. But the rest of the defensive backfield to me is almost as interesting as the corners because their guys are not where they necessarily started the year, but it feels like a month into the season, a little more than a month into the season now, they maybe have finally everyone had to take like one step to the left, and Josh Proctor had a season-ending injury, which is not the way they wanted to have this happen, but you feel like maybe now they've got those three safety spots kind of sorted out.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's precisely where I said they should have been before the season, Tom. I don't know if you recall me saying all of this, but this is pretty much exactly how I called it. But it is good to see things falling in place. Players are comfortable. They're playing. We keep talking about Lathan Ransom finally, where he was brought into play. Cam Martinez. It was looked at as that perfect slot guy because he is quick and he is not the biggest guy. So I think all of these moves make complete sense, and you're seeing the benefit of it.
Okay, we have had a lot of action on the Super Chat, so I'm probably not going to roll them in the right order that they came in, but let's try and get through it. I want to thank I Can Sell You for his Super Chat contribution. He's not asked a question yet, but be sure to jump in with that, so let me clear that one through. Nutty Buckeye has also jumped in with a Super Chat and has a question. What will you need to see from the defense to be convinced that we haven't been shown fool's gold during going into the Big Ten East Gauntlet after the open week?
That's a good question because you feel like this is progress, but how much does it? I don't know that I could necessarily see anything today that makes me say, absolutely, this is fixed 100%. Because you saw Maryland look like historically bad last week. So but that required a good Iowa defense. So, it's possible to make Maryland look historically bad. But I think that would make you a good defense. I mean, I don't think you can possibly rely on Taulia Tagovailoa throwing 5 interceptions again. Like, if he does, that's going to be like, okay. I think it might be a combination of what kind of pressure are they getting on him? Is the pass rush consistently getting pressure? Even if they're not getting sacks, are they consistently making him scramble, getting him out of the pocket, making him throw before he's ready to throw? That's number one. And number two, are they able to limit the big plays? I'm not necessarily worried about if Maryland has a bunch of 13-yard passes and go up and down the field but don't necessarily score. Have they really cut out the 40, 50-yard big plays? I mean, Rutgers hit one last week, 75 yards to Crookshank. Can they cut those out? Because this is better skill talent than they've seen probably any week since Oregon, I would say. So, can they get pressure on the quarterback? Can they limit the big plays? If they have 4 sacks today, 3-4 sacks today, and they don't give up a play longer than 30 yards or so, I think that would be, at least a tentative thumbs up for me.
Definitely. I would also add just impacting the ball, whether it's the pass rush or PBUs on passes where it's not just Maryland fails because they just didn't catch the ball. If it's Ohio State's defense making plays as well, that would be a huge thing for me. And just the intermediate passing game that we've seen some issues, that's where Maryland is really good. So if they tackle, they cover. I think if we all have Maryland scoring 24 points in this game, I've said yesterday that if 17 of those come in the first 3 quarters and there's a junk touchdown at the end of the game, I think that's a pretty good day for this Ohio State defense that will then be able to assess where they stand during the bye week and go ahead and add some tweaks.
Let me jump in with Rightful One, who also hit the super chat. Good morning from Texas. I miss my home state. Thank you for being my source to all my Buckeye news, I'm assuming. How mad will they be at the bar when I ask them, can you please turn off this Red River mess and put the Buckeyes game on?
Please call it the Red River mess when you do that. And, just go ahead and then send us your medical bills.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little jealous you get the Texas State Fair fried Oreos, but, they're pretty good. But, yeah, it's I would, from I haven't spent a ton of time in Texas, but I understand a lot of people are strapped there. So just be careful when you do say that.
Another super chat from our good friend Treasure the Torah. Let me get this to move. What's up, fellas? It's your brother from another mother. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the game today. Buckeye Nation in the house.
I would agree. I was hoping to see more people mulling about out there, but we did get here pretty early. Got here about 4 hours before kick, so still plenty of traffic police telling me which roads I can and cannot drive down, though. So I guess that is a good sign. I would think this place is going to be packed and excited because this is a game that the Buckeyes are starting to look like meet their expectations. So I think you're going to see a pretty good crowd today.
Yeah, you're trending away from the frustration that you had a couple weeks ago and towards a little bit of excitement. Like you can sort of see the pieces falling into place. I think I've said about 10 times this week. Like last week was the first time Ohio State looked like Ohio State, which that's encouraging. And these noon games, the student section is always basically Dodgers fans. Like it is a late arriving crowd. Producer Kevin is a Dodgers fan, so but I mean it is a late arriving crowd in the student section for these noon games unless it's like a monster game. Michigan, the Oregon game this year, they showed up pretty well, but yeah, it's going to be a late arriving crowd, and but it's not a bad day. This is not a bad weather day. It's not exactly, when you looked at this on the schedule, you're like, I bet this is going to be 50 degrees and sunny and crisp and perfect. It's like, well, it's like 79, but it's going to be a nice day. So the weather's not really an excuse to keep people away. Should be a pretty good recruiting weekend as well. I mean, not this is not a massive recruiting weekend, but they've got some big names coming in. Our recruiting guys have sent me a long list of people to like photos of, so we'll be working on that in a little bit. But yeah, it should be a fun day, and you're gonna learn a lot more about this team today than we know right now.
Sap says, can you ask Tony, how does it feel to work with two intellectual people, and does he feel like ham in a sandwich? Hold on. Let me play a noise for that one. There we go. What do you feel? Come on, Tony.
Which two intellectual people are you talking about?
I mean, obviously, Ross and Ross.
No, you know what? The good part about working with Tom and Kevin is when they just hurl insults at me. I know it's coming from a place of love, and right?
What I like about working with Tony is he doesn't realize when we're insulting him.
I like turtles.
I like turtles.
Adam Baker wants to know what's up with Mayan Williams. Again, we kind of talked about that with the availability report, but again, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is he's not playing today. We'll see. I'm going to be very interested to see, is Mayan Williams on the sideline today? If Mayan Williams is on the sideline today, that tells me it's probably an injury. If Mayan Williams is not on the sideline today, that tells me it's probably not an injury.
I'm interested to see what Ryan Day has to say about it because he will be asked about it after the game. And if it's, well, yes, he's got this little, because Ryan Day does not like to talk about injuries. However, he also does not necessarily want to just let something fester in terms of rumor or whatever. So he will have to say, yes, it's an injury, and maybe he's, whether or not that's being honest, who knows. But we'll have more information about Mayan Williams after the game. Will it be accurate? Who's to say?
JS, over under 2.5 sacks and 2.5 picks.
I will go. I'm going to go under the picks and under the sacks.
Yeah, I think under is probably the safe bet. I mean, I just said 3 sacks would be like, wow, this is really a good. And I don't know that they're there yet. If they get 2 sacks, that's still like, okay, that's a pretty. And you get 2 sacks, you get some consistent pressure. That's not a bad day. So I'll go under and under on both of those. But there's a possibility, even if they're not getting the sacks, if the pressure is there consistently, then those picks might go over.
Yeah, if the pressure is there, I think the picks will. I do think 2 interceptions is about right. And again, this Maryland offensive line does not allow Talia Tungavailoa to get sacked. I think they've given up just over 1 per game. So we haven't seen enough from the Ohio State defensive line to think that they're going to get 3 in this game at this point.
Travis Jones asks, will Harry Miller regain the starting center spot at some point this season, or will they roll with Luke Whitler?
I really don't see Harry Miller winning that job back this year. And then you look to like next year. What does that mean for him? I think he could win a guard spot, but Luke Whitler seems to have, like, you don't want to go through not a learning process, but everybody else getting used to a new center. At this point, everybody is used to Luke Whitler. Luke Whitler is comfortable. You're not seeing any more of those grounders when he's snapping. Things are going well. They're able to mix in different guys with Luke Whitler. The calls are remaining solid. So at this point, I don't think you want to change up anything with the offensive line at the apex of the position, as the apex of the offense, as it's known around here. So I don't think Harry Miller wins the job back. I think, for one, he's not even ready to start anywhere yet, I don't think. And then to put all of this other stuff on him at center, I just think it's Luke Whitler's job. I don't know if he's ever going to give it back.
Yeah, that's a real possibility because I mean Luke Whitler he's been good. He's graded out a champion several times this season, and Cj Stroud has now been taking snaps from Luke Whitler pretty much uninterrupted since the middle of camp. So I don't know that you want to mess with that in the middle of a season because now you're halfway. This is after this game, you're halfway through the Ohio State regular season, which I mean sounds crazy to say because it feels like we were literally just in Minnesota, but here we are halfway through the regular season. I don't think he's going to win that starting job back this summer. I mean, theoretically, could he do it next spring? Sure, but yeah, I would be very surprised to see him win that starting job back this season at least.
Kevin Rolston asks, are there recruiting concerns for the 2022 class?
No, not really. I don't think. I mean, yeah, go ahead. Kevin just did a whole recruiting podcast.
Well, I think one of the big things to remember is when you're recruiting national guys, a lot of times it takes a while for these guys to commit. And we still have to get to either the December or the February signing periods. And a lot of these guys have come out and said that they're going to be all-star decisions or after their season decisions. So I think when you look at the surface and you see that it's been a while since they've gotten a commitment, you naturally get concerned and you freak out a little bit. And it's like, oh, my God, they may never land another kid again. But truthfully speaking, it's not a case of where a lot of kids have committed since their last commitment that were high on Ohio State's board. If you're waiting on the Cam Dewberrys and you're waiting on guys like that, it's going to take a little bit of time. Now, if we fast forward into mid-November and we're still sitting at the same number, I think people might be a little bit more concerned. But at this point, at least for me, I don't see it as a huge concern.
I think also you've got official visits going on, and so like a lot of these players are in the middle of their official visits, so they're going to want to take more before they make their final decision.
And the one exception there, I think, is offensive line recruiting. Like, if you want to worry about something with Ohio State recruiting, the offensive line is not fantastic. They've missed on a number of guys that are guys who they probably should have gotten or probably should have not lost to the teams they've lost them to. And so, that is sort of perpetually, if there's going to be a position group of concern, that is sort of perpetually the position group of concern. It hasn't really caught up with them on the field yet, but again, if you want to worry about something, that's I think the spot that you would do it.
Yakov just with a comment saying, although way less fanfare, I need my morning coffee. Your pregame show is, in my opinion, more interesting than game day. And I'm assuming he's talking about from the Four-Letter Network.
Oh, well, I see very similarities between the two shows. We've got us and then Desmond behind the camera.
I like turtles.
Kevin's making a gesture, and it's not the Heisman's.
No, I just told Tony he's number 1. Yeah, now I'm telling him he's number 11. And then Yakov, I'll give him a 2-for-1 here. He says, you guys must get up at 6 a.m. for a noon game. And I said that my alarm went off at about 6:40, 6:45 this morning.
I set my alarm for 6:45 and it did not go off, and I woke up at like 7:10. So that's my fault for being still on time because I live closer.
I live like 30 miles east of Columbus, so yes, I have to get up very, very, very early in the morning to get here. But I never have a problem waking up on a football game day. Like, it's just always you don't get that many of these every year, so you always look forward to them.
And then, like, especially when the Michigan game is here, like I could get here by like 6:37 and just enjoy it. But of course, it's also hard to get up that early.
Here we go. We've had 2 people transfer mid-year. Is this more, less, or average for teams like ours?
I don't think the number isn't unusual. The manner was a little bit unusual with Kayvon Pope, but I mean, I don't think it's unusual, and I don't think it's going to maybe a low number moving forward with the way things are with the transfer portal, the being able to transfer mid-year and still keep your eligibility, and then to play next year immediately wherever you go. I think, too, it used to be like, well, let's see where things stand after spring. That's when people are going to transfer. Now there's also, well, let's see how things are after 4 games, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big piece of it is how many games has a guy played. If he's played 4 or fewer games, he can take that as a redshirt year. So, yeah, the timing of it has sort of changed, but I mean, Ryan Day was asked about the 2018 class. I'm like, hey, you've had a lot of guys transfer from that class. Is that a concern? He's like, yeah, I mean, like, everyone's had a bunch of guys transfer from the 2018 class. And, you're aware of Dallas Gant transferring and Kayvon Pope transferring. But yeah, it feels like there's guys on every team in the country. And when a backup linebacker transfers from Clemson or USC or Alabama or Georgia, it doesn't necessarily hit your Twitter timeline or your, cross your news feed, and so you're not aware of it. But yeah, I mean, because this is not Spencer Rattler transferring. This is not Cj Stroud transferring. This is, backup linebackers, and, unless they happen to do it during the middle of a primetime game right on the field like that, you're not necessarily aware of it.
Yeah, and Brendan White transferred during the season. Pala Ie Naoteote transferred out of the USC during the season. That's just the way of life right now.
We had another super chat. Thank you for that. The question with it is it time to give Tyleik Williams the nickname of Mount Williams? He is a mountain of a man.
Tom, have you considered any nicknames for Tyleik Williams? I believe I had suggested the freshman wall for the entire defensive line. I don't know that we came up with a nickname specifically for Tyleik Williams. He is, I think, at this point, deserving of them. Big Daddy has already been taken. What about Young Daddy?
Nobody better take Big Noon. That's mine. Or Big Me.
Yeah, Big Daddy was long enough ago that you could maybe do a callback, or all the rappers are
a tribute band.
All the rappers are Lil Baby or
Lil Daddy,
Lil Big Daddy. I don't hate Mount Williams. I don't hate it. Yeah. I don't know if Lil Big Daddy is the final form of this one.
Little Big Daddy.
I think we need to keep workshopping this, but yeah, it does feel like he needs one at some point.
Young Lil Big Daddy. We'll figure it out.
We got another super chat coming in, guys. I've got these rolling in. I'm wondering if the new transfer portal rules, along with the super senior accommodations, are affecting the 2023 recruiting, or is there a legitimate concern there? Now, I know that we talked on the basketball side of things. I was in Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days, and Chris Holtman talked about how that's going to affect basketball recruiting. The numbers are much larger, obviously, in football. There's going to be some accommodations coming up here in the 22 situation of where you're going to be able to to stabilize your numbers based on the number of transfers. I don't think that you could really look at anything at 23 and say, well, this is why 23 only has the one player, Ty Lockwood. I think it's just more of a matter of that Ohio State's focused on 22 right now. I think that Mark Pantoni and his staff really has to put a lot of focus on the portal, though. You have to sit there and see what's there, but I don't know if there's a cause and effect situation of where more attention to the portal has slowed some programs down maybe in 23. We're not that far removed from when it was very rare to get a commitment a year out. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just biased by what the past has been, but I don't feel it.
I also think not having visits last year has affected everything and slowed things down as well. So I think things will eventually catch up, but also the ability to have those extra scholarships for maybe the life of these super seniors, and then once those are gone, get rid of them. Or maybe we just need more scholarships. I'm just going to throw that out there. But with basketball, I know there are some coaches who are only going to recruit through the portal now. They're like no longer doing the high school thing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, that doesn't work in football, though. I mean, Jake Spavital at Texas State is trying that. And if you want to look at Texas State's season, it's not going great. That was, that may have been a little bit of a cynical, like a Charlie Weiss at Kansas. Like we're gonna, and I don't have any time crunch now, so we're fine. We can hang on as long as producer Kevin's camera battery computer battery holds on. We'll be good to go. So. Jake Spavital at Texas State has tried that. He basically just didn't recruit high school players last year and just tried to do it all through the portal. And it's probably a little bit cynical where you're just going to kind of try and pump and dump and like, oh, look, we're good all of a sudden. Now I need a bigger job, and now it's the next guy's problem. That has not worked at all in college football. You're going to have to continue to do it. You have to build it the right way. You keep anytime you see Charlie Weiss trying to do the JUCO thing, it's like it generally doesn't work. And then it leaves an enormous mess for David Beatty to clean up. They had 40-something players when David Beatty took on scholarship when David Beatty took over at Kansas. Like that's not even that's like a bad FCS team, and you're trying to play in a Power 5 league. So, yeah.
Well, one last thing. I know we got to get going, and probably got a couple more questions, but
Yeah.
Just got word that Mayan Williams, it is an injury situation. So just for those of you guys wondering.
We'll go about 10 more minutes or so. That'll get us to just about an hour on the show. I have been promising Jeff Gibson that we would get back to our final predictions for today's game. I know that we posted on the board. We got a great partner with Steamboat Dry Goods. Be sure to check all of that out. But I'll jump in first, as you know, in the council of 24. I have 49-24. I just think that Ohio State is going to be able to get out there and kind of move the ball at will. I think that Maryland will find a way to hit a couple of big plays, even with the loss of Dante Demas. I think Raheem Jarrett is very scary. I don't think that Maryland's going to be able to run the ball much. We hear about Tua's little brother being this great runner, but you look at the stats and hasn't been there. It's a long time to be playing the long game for them to sit there and say, this is the game we're going to run them, but running quarterbacks seem to always break off a good one against Ohio State. So 49-24 is my score.
Yeah, wow, I didn't drum along with that for the first time maybe in my entire life. They're playing Phil Collins in the air tonight, and I avoided the, yeah. So first of all, thank you to our sponsor, Steamboat Dry Goods. My shorts that I'm wearing today are from Steamboat Dry Goods. They have a fantastic assortment of, if you are in like an outdoorsy type, great outdoor stuff, very comfortable. I have good hiking socks from Steamboat Dry Goods, so check out Steamboat Dry Goods online. It is a store out in Montana, in Big Sky Country in Montana, but you can order online. Fantastic customer service, and so definitely check them out. They're a wonderful partner for Buckeye Scoop. So my prediction was 48-24. I mean, a lot of the stuff that Kevin said, like it's just, and I think we're all going to be pretty much in the same neighborhood since we were like 4 points off total between the three of us. So, I'm not totally bought in on this Ohio State defense yet. I think it's better. I think they've solved some of the issues. This is not 2019 yet. They're not going to win 76-14 or whatever it was, because they're not going to get off the field quite as quickly. They're not going to turn the ball over quite as much, I don't think. At the same time, if Ohio State's scoring 48 points, that means I'm believing in the offense, and I'm also believing in the defense to probably give them some short fields, turn the ball over a little bit as well. So I think they're better. I don't think they're totally there yet, but yeah, 48-24 is my pick.
And is that is that 2 field goals or a missed extra point?
I don't remember writing that either way, so I think I just know what the score is. The goat entrails just tell me what the score is. They don't tell me how it happens.
The way you try to, with your predictions, play both sides is sickening to me. Whereas me, I went 52-24. I expect 7 touchdowns exactly, and a field goal.
26 safeties.
And if you want to know how those 7 touchdowns and that field goal are going to happen, we can talk about that. But we do need to continue the show. It would drag on. But yes, I think we're all right in that same boat. So expect 73-14 for sure.
Rightful one with the comment, our wide receiver room is absolutely ridiculous. And Rightful one jumped in with another super chat, urging everybody to hit that thumbs up. Said it's not that hard. So there you go.
No, it is a ridiculous room where you've got the number 1 receiver in the 2020 class, Julian Fleming, and you're just saying, you know what, just go ahead and sit this one out. They've got enough guys. You don't need to push it. You got Chris Olave, you got Garrett Wilson, you got Jackson Smith and Jigba. We still haven't seen much from Marvin Harrison yet, and there's been no reason. I mean, he's playing behind Garrett Wilson, which makes playing time difficult for him. Just getting a couple of glimpses of Emeka Egbuka, I think we're going to start to see more there. And it's not the deepest room, but per capita, Tom, it is the most talented room.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You have 2 potential future first-round picks there, at least, maybe 3 starting. Chris Olave absolutely is in that first-round conversation. Garrett Wilson absolutely in that first-round conversation. We've been gassing up Jackson Smith and Jigba since he was in high school. He's I think, absolutely in that conversation as a potential first-round pick at some point. And then you got Marvin Harrison, and you got Emeka Egbuka. And, I mean, even Jaden Ballard is like, Jaden Ballard keeps getting comped to Devin Smith. And, so he was a, second-round pick for the Jets? Second-round pick for the Jets. And, and then you've got Julian Fleming, who was a first overall player in their wide receiver in 2020, who just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I mean, it's just the talent and the talent in future classes is just keeps rolling in. Like it's not like this is stopping anytime soon. So, yeah, I mean, this is, we talked earlier about if there's a place for you to be concerned about recruiting for Ohio State, it's the offensive line. That's where there's at least some question marks. If there's a place for you to not be concerned at all, ever, like not even if you were desperate for something to be concerned about, should you be concerned about the Ohio State wide receiver recruiting? Brian Hartline seems to know what he's doing.
If you have any concerns, maybe aren't the receivers are recruiting? They're not 6'2". Is that a concern, Kevin? Is that a worry?
I'm not concerned about it. Let me jump in here. Somebody saying Tom's voice is very low, and Kevin from Pickerington saying, "Yeah, Tom, speak up." So,
Tell Kevin from Pickering to get 2 mics that work the same level.
They do. You whisper. All right. Well, no microphone for Tom moving forward. Wait.
I like turtles.
All right. We're at 53 minutes. So I'm going to try and get us through 2 or 3 more questions here. We got a lot of good ones. John Alexander, do you think we finally see some blitz packages now that the defense is improving?
This is a question that I have as well, because I keep going back to the Iowa example where they play sound defense. They don't necessarily need to blitz, and they created all kinds of issues, but they also didn't sack Tagovailoa last week. So do you send blitzes and leave the back end open in terms of giving up some big plays, but you're creating the pressure? Or do you just try to allow Talia Tagovailoa to throw the ball to the defense? And so I'm not sure which. I think we will see more blitzes, but Maryland may make them pay for it a couple of times.
Well, and you have to remember they have a couple things that they do on defense where you don't necessarily leave yourself with fewer guys in the back end. They'll drop those defensive ends in coverage sometimes. You bring a corner off the edge and you drop a defensive end into just a zone drop kind of thing. So you're not necessarily leaving yourself quite as vulnerable. But, if you want to do the more traditional, bring more than 4 guys, bring 5, bring 6 even. If you trust the back end of your defense more, which it feels like they should be, and they probably are trusting the back end of that defense more than they have in the past, then maybe you're a little more free to bring a little extra pressure, bring an extra guy. If it's not just, every time the ball goes in the air, Ryan Day is like looking between his fingers going, oh, Lord, what's going to happen? Like, if you trust your safeties, maybe then you're a little more free to bring a little more pressure up front.
One more? You got to get out of here, right?
No, I'm good.
No, I was going to say we're going to try and take it to an hour, so we got 6 minutes. Computer's got 19%. Tom's like, oh, I've got to leave at XYZ time, so I didn't bring the power cord up here. Not to be confused with the extension cord that is in the trunk of my car right now. I know, isn't it? This is a question for Tom right here, just because of when we did Buckeye Weekly yesterday. Is Nebraska good enough to beat OSU? And then Ed Rogers says, no.
I don't know that you can say that anyone is not good enough to beat OSU. I mean, like, Akron was not good enough to beat OSU. I think.
Contradicted yourself.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't think you can say anyone on the remaining schedule is not. Maybe Purdue isn't good enough to beat Ohio State. A road game at Nebraska. Nebraska has a good defense. If Nebraska catches Ohio State on the right day or the wrong day, depending on how you want to look at it, they could beat Ohio State. Cj Stroud turns the ball over a couple times. The crowd gets going. They get a little rattled. They fall behind. Nebraska doesn't have to put a ton of pressure on the offense. They can just kind of run the ball, keep the clock moving. Like, there's a scenario where I don't think Ohio State's going in there as an underdog or anything, and I'm not going to pick Nebraska to beat Ohio State, but there's a way Nebraska beats them. And Nebraska and Michigan playing today, I mean, that's a fascinating game. That game might be more interesting to me than Penn State, Iowa in a lot of ways, because it feels like I still don't totally trust either of those teams. We were talking, and it's like I can absolutely see Nebraska beating Michigan, but I start saying I think Nebraska could beat Michigan today, and it's just like, well, why would you trust a Scott Frost team? Like, it's just, they're better. Like, they're self-evidently better than they have been for a number of years. They've got better talent. They're solving some of the issues they've had. But it's like they just keep finding ways to lose games that they shouldn't lose. They've had all 3 games they've been in and lost this year: Illinois, Michigan State, and Oklahoma. Like, those are 2 good teams, and also Illinois. But they found a way to lose them. So it's like, it's good, you're hanging with them. It's bad, you're 3-3.
Yeah, I'm picking Nebraska and already knowing that, like, I'm going to be like, why? Why did I do this?
I want to thank, I got to find it here, Jordan Kapler for his Super Chat contribution. No questions, just wanted to say thanks for the great shows. Had a lot of positive feedback about people loving the shows. We got another one in from Sap.
Read the ones about how good we are.
I generally do, but
we can go 90.
Wait, I don't have to rush. You read them all.
Yeah. Let me get to the last question I have in the queue that we have time for. Jordan asks, if those the cornerbacks stay healthy, then I'm fine with that position. My worry is the D-line getting pressure and the linebackers.
Yeah, I still think the defensive line will eventually get there, thanks in large part to the defensive tackles creating issues and allowing because at some point the offensive line is going to start focusing more on the defensive tackles, which should maybe leave some room for the defensive ends. The linebackers, I think things are rounding into shape there. I feel like, I don't know, Tom, for you, where is the biggest concern? I guess I would say the defensive ends getting home, because that group has yet to live up to its billing. And I think the linebackers are going to be fine. The secondary, I like all of the parts of it right now. So for me, like, the underwhelming aspect of things right now, it's the defensive ends for me.
Yeah, it feels like they've kind of solved the linebackers to a certain degree. I mean, you're seeing different guys playing than you did earlier in the year, but Steel Chambers feels like he's got a role. Cody Simon, has been getting healthier. It feels like he's got a role. If Palaie now Teote can be healthy, like, he may have a role there, and that role may change a little bit. But you're seeing different guys than you saw at the beginning of the year. Taraja Mitchell has been, solid throughout the season. But, some of the guys early in the year that you're kind of going like, yeah, it's not going great, like, are not there anymore. And, that then, of course, creates depth concerns, which is a little bit of a concern. But, yeah, I think I'm with you. I mean, just thinking through the team right now, I don't know that there's any position group that's more like, before the year we looked at the corners and thought the corners were the big question mark on this team. And the corners have been, like, of all the things, maybe the most pleasant surprise and maybe one of the surest things in some ways with this team, especially with Denzel Burke. And then you look at the defensive end, you're like, wow, they are loaded. They're going to dominate. And then Zach Harrison hasn't been completely healthy. Tyreek Smith hasn't been completely healthy. You've got some of the younger guys who are still coming along. Tyler Friday out for the year. I mean, it's like there's reasons why, but you want to see some production out of that spot in the sack column at some point.
Good. All right, you want to wrap up?
All right. So that will do it for our pregame show. We will be back, of course, for a postgame show after the game. We'll have after the game ends, we'll be down in the postgame interview room to talk to Brian Day, a bunch of the Buckeye players. That'll all be streamed live here at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. The best way to make sure you don't miss that is to hit the bell, subscribe to our channel, and then you get notified as soon as we go live with that. And we'll have that. And then after that, we'll have a sort of a short interlude to move downstairs, and then Tony and I will be back for our post-game instant reaction episode of Buckeye Weekly. That's all here at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. If you have not subscribed, please do subscribe, hit that bell, also hit that thumbs up. That does help other folks encourage the lovely YouTube algorithm. Don't mind producer Kevin. It does encourage the lovely YouTube algorithm to encourage other folks to find these shows as well, which we do genuinely appreciate. So thank you guys all for your questions. Thank you all for your super chats. Thank you all for your support and your viewership, and we will see you guys after the game.